stop telling what's going on in your life. There's something really powerful about learning how to hold things close, not out of secrecy, but out of sacredness. Too often we're told that vulnerability means laying everything bare, that in order to be authentic, we must be transparent. So we post, we vent, we overshare, and we think we're connecting. But what we're really doing is scattering our energy in places that cannot hold it. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your story. Let me say that again. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your story. You don't owe your process to people who haven't earned your trust. You don't need to update the world while your soul is still stitching itself together. There is deep courage in choosing silence, in letting your life bloom quietly. Growth doesn't always have to make noise. It doesn't have to be documented in real time. We often confuse attention with love, validation with intimacy. But true connection, it's not built through constant updates. It's built through shared presence, mutual care, and emotional safety. Oversharing is often a disguised plea for connection, but real connection doesn't demand exposure. It respects boundaries. Protect your healing, guard your becoming. Your journey is sacred ground and it deserves a safe container, one where your messy, brilliant, tender becoming can unfold without judgment, gossip, or performance. So stop telling everyone what's going on in your life, not because you're hiding, but because you are honoring, because you understand that the deepest parts of you are not up for public consumption. They are for the trusted, the proven, the present. Your strength is not in how much you share. Your strength is in knowing when to hold and when to release. There's something holy about letting your life speak for itself. Quietly, powerfully, authentically, when the time is right. Let your growth be witnessed by the worthy. And until then, protect your becoming like the sacred fire it is. There comes a time in your life, usually somewhere between heartbreak and healing, between staying small and stepping into something bigger, when you begin to understand a quiet truth. Not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. That hits different when you've lived through it, when you've given people front row tickets to your vulnerability, your pain, your joy, and they use that access to judge, to minimize, or to walk away when it got inconvenient. It's wild how we think we have to be available to everyone, that we're supposed to explain our every move, every change, every shift in energy. But what if you don't owe anyone that? What if growing doesn't require an announcement? What if the real power isn't in telling your story, but in protecting it? See, we grow up thinking loyalty looks like keeping everyone close. But sometimes keeping everyone close is what keeps you stuck, because there are people in your life who were never meant to go the whole way with you. They were chapters, not the book. But we feel guilty for outgrowing people. We feel like we're being cold if we don't update everyone. So we hand out seats, front row, no questions asked, to people who haven't earned that level of intimacy, people who cheer when it's easy and disappear when it's not. Here's the truth. Some people only show up for the highlight reel. They want to see the glow up, not the grind. They want the punchline, not the process. And when your life stops entertaining them, they look for the next show. You don't need those people in your front row because they aren't rooting for you. They're watching you. There's a difference. One fills you up, the other drains your spirit. And I know it hurts when people shift. When someone you thought would always be there starts pulling back. You question if it's you. You try to shrink your joy so they don't feel left behind. You shrink your pain so they don't get uncomfortable. But here's what no one tells you. You're not responsible for making other people comfortable with your evolution. The truth is, when you grow, you trigger something in people who aren't ready to grow with you. Your clarity makes them uncomfortable. Your boundaries feel like rejection. Your healing highlights their avoidance. So they pull back, or they criticize, or they twist your story because your peace makes more noise than their chaos. And in that moment, you have a choice. Shrink yourself to stay digestible for people who don't have the emotional range to hold your truth, or stand tall, knowing that the front row of your life is not general admission. Access to you should be earned, not by time served, but by emotional presence, by consistency, by depth, by alignment. Someone can be in your life for 10 years and still not know your heart. Someone else can meet you in a season of struggle and show up with more grace, more compassion, more soul than people who've known you since childhood. Loyalty isn't about history. It's about energy, about reciprocity, about safety. So maybe it's time to take inventory. Look around. Who's in your front row? Who's showing up when the lights are off and the music fades? Who holds your hand when the spotlight dims? Who listens without fixing, supports without needing credit, and loves you without conditions? If the answer is not many, that's okay. Front rows aren't supposed to be crowded. They're sacred, they're small, they're reserved for the people who see you, not the version of you they want, not the one that performs, but the real you, the messy, evolving, tired, joyful, quiet, loud, human you. And maybe the most freeing thing you can do right now is stop giving VIP passes to people who don't clap for your healing, who get distant when you set boundaries, who only understand you when you're broken, but can't handle you when you're whole. This isn't bitterness, it's clarity. It's choosing peace over performance. It's choosing alignment over obligation. It's choosing yourself. So no, don't feel guilty for pulling back. Don't explain your silence. Don't water down your truth just to make someone else comfortable. If they loved the version of you who didn't know your worth, of course they'll feel distant now that you do. Let them feel it. And then let yourself rise, because not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. But you deserve to be surrounded by people who clap when you win, hold you when you fall, and love you through the in-between. Let's tell the truth here. We live in a world obsessed with instant updates. Everything is posted or it didn't happen. We're encouraged to narrate our lives like a running documentary, unedited, uncensored, open to public commentary. And somewhere along the way, we confused oversharing with connection, but they are not the same. Oversharing can feel like connection in the moment. It gives the illusion of closeness. It says, look how open I am, look how honest, look at what I'm willing to say. And for a split second, we feel seen. We feel bold, we feel raw and real. But afterward, when the echo of our vulnerability doesn't get the response we hoped for, or worse, it's used against us, we're left with a very different feeling. Exposed. Here's the thing. Real connection is built on trust, on mutual respect, on safety. It's not about how much you reveal. It's about who you reveal it to and why. Oversharing is often impulsive. It can be a way to rush intimacy to feel known without doing the slower work of building something grounded. It can be driven by anxiety, by loneliness, by the desperate need to feel close to someone, anyone. So we spill, we trauma dump, we unload our pain onto people who haven't earned the right to carry it. And when they don't respond with the depth we need, we feel abandoned all over again. But that isn't connection. That's leaking. And when you leak, you're not healing. You're just spilling your pain everywhere, hoping someone will help you clean it up. But connection doesn't come from dumping. It comes from deliberate vulnerability, from mutual holding, from a space where your softness isn't treated like weakness, but honored as truth. Let me be clear. There is nothing wrong with being vulnerable. Vulnerability is beautiful, brave, transformative. But it needs a container. It needs boundaries. It needs people who know how to hold it without making it about them, without judging, without turning your moment of openness into their moment of discomfort. Oversharing isn't a flaw, it's a pattern, a survival strategy often learned early in life. Maybe you grew up in a space where being honest was the only way you could be seen. Maybe you were praised for being so mature because you knew how to articulate your pain when you were still too young to process it. Maybe you thought that the more you shared, the more people would love you, that if you were transparent enough, no one would leave. But what if I told you, you don't have to explain your pain to deserve support. You don't have to bare your soul to be worthy of being held. You don't have to turn yourself inside out just to be close to someone. Because real connection doesn't require performance. It doesn't demand the whole story right away. It respects your timing. It waits for your readiness. It sees you even when you're quiet. So the next time you feel the urge to share everything, ask yourself, is this person emotionally safe? Am I seeking connection or validation? Will I still feel good about sharing this tomorrow? Is this moment about healing or reacting? You deserve to be known, but not at the cost of your peace. Start connecting in spaces where silence is welcome, where eye contact means, I'm here with you, and where your heart doesn't feel like it has to shout to be heard. The deepest connections often don't require words. They come in quiet understanding, in being held without having to explain, in the kind of safety that whispers, you don't have to prove anything, just be here. That is connection. Oversharing may be loud, but connection is soft, gentle, steady. One fills the room, the other fills your soul. Healing isn't loud. It's not always pretty. It's not something you can always post about, package neatly, or explain in a way that makes sense to everyone. Healing is raw, it's private, it's messy, and more than anything, it's sacred, which is exactly why you need to protect it. When you're healing, you're not just recovering from pain, you're rebuilding trust with yourself. You're learning how to listen to your gut again, how to move without flinching, how to breathe without bracing. That's intimate work, holy work, and it deserves to happen in a space that is safe, quiet, and held, not judged, analyzed, or rushed. But we live in a world that doesn't know how to sit with pain. A world that demands explanations, quick fixes, and inspirational quotes before you've even caught your breath. So we feel pressure to share, to show progress, to prove that we're getting better. You don't have to prove anything. Your healing is yours. It doesn't need to be justified. It doesn't need to be understood. It doesn't even need to be seen. Protect it. Because the early stages of healing are fragile. You're tender, vulnerable, open. And if you invite the wrong voices into that space too soon, if you give too many people access to your process, you risk absorbing opinions that have nothing to do with your truth. People will give advice based on their fear. They'll try to rush your timeline because they're uncomfortable sitting in discomfort. They'll minimize what broke you because they can't face what's broken in themselves. Not everyone can meet you in your healing. Not everyone should. This is not about being secretive. It's about being intentional. You can love people deeply and still not invite them into your sacred process. You can have support without putting your entire story on display. Think of healing like a seed. You don't dig it up every day to show the world how much it's grown. You water it, you nourish it, you guard it from harsh weather and hungry hands, and eventually, when it's ready, it breaks the surface and blooms. But that part, the breaking and the blooming, that happens quietly, underground, unseen. You get to take as long as you need. You get to not respond to the text. You get to log off. You get to say, I'm not available right now. I'm working on myself. That is a full sentence. That is enough. Because healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel like you're glowing again. Other days you'll sit in silence wondering if you've made any progress at all. That's normal. That's human. That's part of it. And you don't need to explain that cycle to anyone who doesn't know how to hold it with reverence. Protect your peace. Protect your softness. Protect your edges. This work is not for everyone to watch. Healing doesn't need an audience. It needs presence. Yours. So keep your circle small if you must. Keep your stories to yourself until they're ready to be shared, from the scar, not the wound. Let your healing be slow, awkward, sacred, and entirely yours. And if someone asks, why don't you tell me? Let your calm be your answer. Let your joy speak when it's ready. Let your life show them without ever needing to perform. Because the ones who really love you won't need front row access to believe in your becoming. They'll feel it in how you move and how you rise and how you glow quietly, without ever needing to explain a thing. We often treat silence like something to be fixed, like a blank page that demands to be filled, like an awkward pause in conversation that we rush to cover. But what if silence isn't empty? What if silence is sacred? We don't talk about this enough because we're addicted to noise, to updates, to opinions, to constantly explaining what we're doing and why, to filling the air with something, anything, so that we don't have to sit with the stillness. But healing lives in the stillness. Clarity lives in the stillness. And sometimes your next chapter isn't waiting to be spoken, it's waiting to be heard. And you can't hear it if you're drowning in distraction, constantly narrating your life out loud before it has a chance to unfold naturally. There are moments when the most powerful thing you can do is get quiet. Step back. Log off. Pause the updates, not to hide, but to hold space for yourself. Because silence is not the absence of something, it's the presence of you. Without noise, without feedback, without performance. It's the rawest version of you, untouched by commentary. And that version holds wisdom. We forget this, especially when we're in transition. You lose a relationship, you feel the pressure to explain what happened. You change your mind, you feel the pressure to justify why. You evolve and the world says, give us a reason. But the deeper your change, the quieter it may need to be. Because sometimes when you're healing, the worst thing you can do is invite in voices that haven't earned the right to speak into your transformation. Silence becomes your boundary, your protection, your reminder that not everything sacred has to be spoken. You don't owe your process to people who are only curious, not committed. You don't need to package your pain into something poetic just to be understood. You don't have to explain why you're not available, why you're not updating, why you've gone still. Stillness is an answer. Silence is a whole sentence. It's where the real work happens. The parts of you that you're still learning how to love, they grow in the quiet. The parts of you that still feel uncertain, raw, in between, they don't need to be rushed into articulation. They need to be held in silence, held in gentleness, held with reverence. So don't let the noise of the world rush your rhythm. Don't let the pressure to share rob you of the gift of solitude. Silence is not a retreat from your life. It's a return to your core. It's where your spirit exhales. It's where your real voice rises, not the performative one, not the polished one, but the voice that says, I don't need to be seen to be becoming. I don't need to be heard to be healing. I don't need to speak right now to know that I'm growing. Let that be your reminder. You are not lost in your silence. You are found there. You are not disappearing. You are reappearing as someone more whole, more true, more aligned. So honor the quiet season. Sit in it like it's holy, because it is, because you are. And the ones who are truly for you, they'll feel your growth in your energy. They'll sense your becoming without needing a single word. They'll know something powerful is happening in that silence, and they'll respect it. We live in a world that worships the finished product. People want the before and after, the glow up, the redemption arc with a perfect caption and maybe a filter or two. But what they don't want is the middle. They don't want the mess. They don't want the shaky days, the chapters that don't make sense yet, the parts of the story that don't fit into clean little boxes. But you are living the middle. You are in the tension between the no longer and the not yet. You're rewriting beliefs, unlearning patterns, and rebuilding trust with yourself, with others, with life. That's not something you rush. That's not something you present to the world unfinished. Because here's the truth most people won't say out loud. Your story is still in progress, and that is enough. You don't owe anyone a neat ending right now. You don't have to turn your healing into a lesson just to make someone else feel comfortable with your process. You don't have to find meaning in your pain before you've even finished feeling it. Some days you'll be glowing, other days you'll barely make it out of bed. That's not failure. That's not regression. That's what becoming looks like. You're allowed to be a work in progress and still be proud of who you are. You're allowed to have questions and confusion and contradictions. You're allowed to say, I don't know yet, and still walk with confidence. This pressure to package your life into something inspirational before it's even real, that's not healing, that's performance. And you don't owe anyone a performance. You're not here to be impressive. You're here to be whole. And wholeness comes through honoring the in-between spaces, the pauses, the plot twists, the rewrites. It comes from choosing presence over polish. It comes from saying, I'm not finished yet, but I'm still worthy, even here, even now. Let go of the pressure to turn your process into content. Let go of the idea that if you're not constantly sharing, you're not growing. Some of your deepest growth will never be posted. Some of your biggest breakthroughs will happen in private, and that doesn't make them less real. That makes them yours. The most powerful stories are the ones you don't rush, the ones you sit with, the ones that teach you something before you ever tell them to the world. You are allowed to be the narrator and the character. You are allowed to be confused and committed. You are allowed to be healing and uncertain. That's what real transformation looks like. That's what the middle of the story is supposed to feel like. So take the pressure off. Let yourself be unfinished. Let yourself be in process. Let yourself live the story before you try to tell it. Because one day, when you're ready, you'll look back at this part, this messy, tender, not quite there part, and you'll see it wasn't a detour. It was the chapter that made everything else possible. And when people finally ask, how did you do it? You'll smile and say, I kept going, even before I had the ending. Let's clear something up. Privacy isn't secrecy. It's not shame. It's not avoidance. And it sure as hell isn't weakness. Privacy is wisdom. It's discernment. It's choosing yourself first, not out of fear, but out of respect, out of knowing that your life isn't a public event. It's yours. In a culture that pressures us to live wide open, to share every thought, every move, every emotion in real time, choosing privacy can feel like rebellion, but it's not rebellion. It's reclaiming. It's saying, I don't need to narrate this moment to live it. I don't need to explain this season to justify it. I don't need to show you what I'm building for it to be real. Privacy is not a wall that keeps people out. It's a door, a sacred door, one that you choose when and how to open, if at all. It means you decide who gets access. You decide who's safe. You decide who has earned the right to witness your process, not just your highlight reel. Because some people will take your softness as an invitation to pry. Some will ask for details they're not prepared to hold with care. Some will listen only to judge. Some will take your openness and twist it into something they can gossip about or misunderstand. You are not obligated to give them that power. Privacy is your filter, your boundary, your reminder that just because you can share doesn't mean you have to. It's you saying, my life is sacred, my story is unfolding, and not every page is meant to be read aloud. This isn't about shutting people out. It's about building a space that feels safe enough to let the right people in. It's about learning that intimacy is not built through constant exposure, but through mutual trust, through presence, through knowing that some things are stronger when protected. That vulnerability is powerful, but only when it's held with care. You get to be private and connected. You get to be whole and quiet. You get to be visible without being transparent about everything. You are not required to prove your healing. You are not required to explain your choices. You are not required to be accessible at the cost of your peace. Let your privacy be your sanctuary. Let it be where you recalibrate, reflect, and return to yourself. Without performance, without pressure. Because when you finally choose to open that door, when you feel safe, grounded, and ready, the ones who are meant to walk through it will come in with gentleness. They won't push. They won't pry. They'll meet you in your stillness and say, "Thank you for trusting me with this part of you." And you'll know privacy didn't isolate you, it protected your becoming. Conclusion, the power of quiet becoming. So here you are, maybe a little softer, maybe a little wiser, definitely more sacred than anyone ever gave you credit for. You've walked through the fire of needing to be seen and come out realizing not everything has to be visible to be valid. Not every transformation needs an audience. Not every part of your journey is for public consumption. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is say nothing, to keep your process to yourself, to let your healing grow roots in the silence, to protect your becoming like it's holy, because it is. This isn't about closing off. This is about choosing who gets access to the most intimate, most powerful parts of you. You're learning now, oversharing is not connection. Silence is not weakness. Privacy is not secrecy. Your story isn't finished, and your healing doesn't need to be explained to be real. You are allowed to live in the middle of your becoming without narrating every step. You are allowed to change in peace. You are allowed to move differently, quietly, intentionally, privately. Because you're not here to perform, you're here to be whole. So if no one told you today, it's okay to go quiet. It's okay to hold your healing with both hands and say, "This is just for me right now." It's okay to grow in the dark, to not explain, to not share, to not post, to not tell. Because the most powerful transformations often don't make noise. They don't come with applause. They come with alignment, with peace, with clarity that whispers instead of shouts. Let the world wonder. Let them feel your shift without needing to understand it. You don't owe your evolution to anyone, but you do owe yourself the safety to evolve without interruption. So be still, be private, be sacred, be you quietly, fully,